on a day or so. Now, what they did to Orv, whenever he'd make an improvement on the Franklin automobile, the company would send him a gold watch, because Orv really wasn't interested in money for that area. In fact, you have. Now, Orv, he wouldn't really want everybody to know this, but he sent a few engineers to college. He wrote the check. And the only way you'd know it if you went through his checkbook. And on J. Petrie, he said, he's pretty worth sending to college. Now, there's so many things about my family, and I just, you know, I'm so excited to be here. It's sort of like I don't know quite where to begin, but one of the areas I'd like to begin with you this evening is to take you on a visit into our family album. Our father kept these photographs, and as he kept the photographs, and there is Will and Orv, age 36 and 32, at that time of that first flight, there on December 17th, 1903. It was a little windier today than it was on that particular day. But each one complimented the other. In fact, you know, when they first went into business, they had a joint checking account, and neither one ever questioned the other on how they might spend the money. And let's go on further in our family album to the most famous photo. Why, someone told me the other day, he said, this is more famous than the Mona Lisa. And one of the little known facts about my family is that Orv had the hobby of photography. And if he had not had this hobby of photography, he would not have been able to capture that historic moment that proved that they were the first to accomplish powered flight. Mother was the inventive genius of the family. She majored in mathematics at Hartville College in Hartville, Indiana. And that's where she met our father. My grandfather was a carriage maker who came from Germany, and he built carriages in southern Indiana. Mother learned the art of engineering from father, and throughout our household, she was oftentimes coming up with inventions. And when she met father, father was all set to be a missionary with the Indians in Oregon, and he had gone around the Isthmus of Panama and up the western coast of our country. However, Mother did not see that as her life's work of becoming a missionary in Oregon, so father came back and got a farm not far from Hartville College, and they were married. Now, father never gave a speech or a sermon without reading it over to Mother first, because chances are, if Mother didn't care for it, no one else would either. If you had a brother like Orv who was always coming up with hobbies, and he working with printing presses, and then with photography and bicycling, there just wasn't enough room in the house to put the stuff for Orv. In fact, we didn't really have that much space in our home. As you see the photographs, and I taught English and Latin in Steele High School. I wanted to teach Greek because my father was such a Greek scholar, but they always gave that assignment to the men teachers. Now, oftentimes, this is the most famous letter that ever arrived at the Smithsonian Institution. In fact, they treasure that even today. And what they had to say was this letter from Will, because he had read everything he possibly could. And he said, I believe that simple flight at least is possible to man. I am an enthusiast, but not a crank, in a sense that I have some pet theories as to the proper construction of a flying machine. I wish to avail myself of what is already known, and then, if possible, add my mite to help on the future worker who will attain final success. I do not know. This is a family favorite photo of me, and what is unusual in my times that people didn't usually smile when they were getting their photograph taken. So perhaps this gives you a little clue that I might be the outgoing one of the family. And there's Will in the bicycle shop. You can tell it's him just by the way he moves. He'd come home at night and he'd be completely covered with grease. Orv, on the other hand, could work in white shirt and tie all day long and never a drop of anything on him. He was immaculate. But Will and Orv did all the sewing, and night after night as they would be sewing, we'd have that sateen material all over the house. And I'd be saying, I'll be so glad when you're gone next week. It's going to be peace and quiet around here. Changed my mind, though. And Mother said, make all your mistakes on paper. It's a lot cheaper that way. Mother made all that. But Tate, who was the postmaster in Kitty Hawk, happened to write back. And I think if Will had found out how difficult it was to get to Elizabeth City and then on to Kitty Hawk, I don't think he would ever gone there. But the hospitality of the Tates took him in. And as they took him in, that was right before he set up camp. Now, this doesn't look exactly like the dorm rooms I saw here at Cedarville College tonight. And I'm sure you didn't have a cloud of mosquitoes coming in on you unexpectedly, so dark that you couldn't see anything. But Will and Orv began them to camp, and as they set up the kitchen, they kept a chicken on hand for some fresh eggs. And because they didn't have refrigeration, they numbered the eggs in the order in which they were laid. The flights. You know, as Will said, it was like trying to tame a wild horse. No one had ever done that before. In fact, when he got home, we got this call from Octave Chanute, who had become a friend of ours right now. Octave Chanute was a bridge builder, and as a bridge builder, he had designed a number of gliders. He was very interested, and he was very supportive of Will and Orv. In fact, I shouldn't tell you this, but he offered Will and Orv $10,000 to help with their experiments. But Will and Orv did not want to be beholden to anyone. They had discovered the 1902 glider, and at this time they were beginning to get some more control, and this is the one that was done just before the 1903 glider, and it used a lot of the tables that Will, to start with, everything seemed to come from the bicycle, and it was a little difficult to get the accuracy they wanted. So they built a big box that air could be sent through it. And as they built this big box, Will and Orv were the first to make a wind tunnel in which miniature wings could be accurately tested. They were first to make the useful measurements of the lift and the drag and of the travel, the center of pressure on curved surfaces. Powered flight. When Will and Orv flipped a coin, and you know Mr. Tate didn't come out that day. He's sorry he missed it. He thought it was too windy. In fact, in later years, we got this telegram. Father gave my brothers $1 and said, when you accomplish this flight, send me a telegram, and we will have Lauren take it down to the Dayton paper so that the people in Dayton, Ohio, can be the first ones to know about powered flight. Well, the city editor said, less than a minute, that's certainly not newsworthy. But if it were 2 hours, then it would be newsworthy. And this was the first powered, practical flying machine that could take off and fly in a circle and land and be up about a half hour. Now, Will stayed in Leon Bali's automobile factory. He actually stayed on a cot. Nothing as glamorous as what you might think of some of the early flyers. And he carried his own lunch pail. But the first day he didn't go up, so people left and they said, bluffer, bluffer. And that's what they seemed to think of Will. But it was the next day then that he flew. And then as people then began to come in crowds and see what was happening, I like this as a kid. So while Will was in France experimenting, Orv was in Fort Myers, Virginia. Orv himself nearly lost his life. He was gravely injured. I left my teaching position here in Dayton, went directly to Washington to be with Orv, and when I got there to the hospital, I saw him in the room, and I didn't want to go in. I felt so badly because he looked so gravely injured. And when I had my first flight, I really wasn't in a big hurry, but you notice how I have the string tied around my ankle, and of course tonight I'm wearing the scarf because after all, there's King Alphonse of Spain. I'm looking him straight in the eye. And he said, I promised Isabel that I would not go up in a flying machine. And I thought, he's just afraid, that's all. And they were now no longer private citizens. The first time I ever saw a check for $25,000, I didn't think I'd ever see that much money in my life. That was what Charlie Rolls paid for the first flying machine that he... It's really hard to find a group picture of our whole family because though Will and Orv had a hobby of photography, none of us as a family ever posed for formal photographs. Actually, none of us ever had a middle name either. And Will flew or trained. You know, you could learn how to become a pilot for $250, and your total time in the air might be a total of 3 hours before you'd get your ticket. But such a short life. And Father noted that in his diary. And this is the home that Will didn't get the opportunity to move into. It's the same on the front as the back. Orv and Will had seen homes at Fort Myers, Virginia, and thought that they might too design a home like this on a hill. It shows the winged goddess of aviation looking out over Will and Orv's shoulders as they watch the eagle fly out over the chasm. Oh, you must see Orv's shower. You know, he didn't have to turn around. The water would hit him at all angles. He also had a shower curtain that was from the tarp at Kitty Hawk, particular #1 pilot. This was a gift for the United States government recognizing Orv as the #1 pilot. Hawthorne Hill. And now this evening, perhaps you yourself might have a question or two, because I couldn't possibly tell you everything about our family in the time I'm with you this evening, but I would welcome you personally. You are a wonderful audience. I'm sorry Will and Orv couldn't be with you.